So let me explain how you're going to use the analysis vocabulary worksheet. Again, it's a resource to help you, just like the description checklist that you can refer to when you're writing your description of the artwork. So how to use this vocabulary sheet. When you look at the artwork, first notice which elements of design are being used and how are they being used. The vocabulary that's provided will help you write better and more informative sentences because they're going to suggest adjectives, right? Descriptive words that maybe you didn't think about, but when you look at the artwork, you're like, yeah, it does use those particular types of lines or types of shapes. There might be more vocabulary that you can think of than what's on the list, but you can definitely refer to the list. Again, it's meant to be a guide. It's to help you. It's a resource. So for example, we have this sculpture here. It's a three-dimensional sculpture. So if we look at the types of lines that are being used, I'm choosing lines because that is definitely a dominant element of design. So for example, when I'm looking at the list of adjectives here, definitely we see straight lines. Yes, there are pointy angles, but they're straight, right? The lines are not smooth, they're not curved. The lines are also meandering. Meandering means they move around in random directions, right? There doesn't seem to be too much organization of lines here, so they kind of meander back and forth. We could also say that the lines are diagonal because they go in many directions, right? They're diagonal to each other. If we were to look at this sculpture in terms of how it uses space, so we could say that there's definitely positive and negative space as well as open space because yes, you can talk about positive and negative and that the blue parts of the sculpture are positive because they are the actual object, but there is negative space within each section of the sculpture. But you can also say that the use of space is open because it's open in the center. The lines, the walls, the structure of the sculpture they're not very thick. So again, you can look at this. Yes, most artworks use positive and negative space, but they also use space in other ways as well. The same thing on that worksheet in terms of talking about the principles of design. So basically, how are the elements put together? So with this sculpture here, in terms of balance, again, we're not talking about physical balance, we're looking at visual balance. So this artwork definitely uses asymmetrical balance, right? Which side is heavier? That is going to be the right-hand side, right? It visually looks heavier. And another example here with this sculpture, if we talk about contrast, right? There is contrast when we talk about value. And notice the questions that are available, right? Where do you see the most lighted areas? Where do you see the most dark areas? Well, I'm not really going to talk about the use of value in this sculpture because, well, I can't. But I can say that there's a contrast of color, right? Dark values versus this transparent glass material. Texture, right? This hard, rough texture being contrasted with the smooth glass-like form. And we can also talk about form in that it's contrasting geometric forms with organic forms. So you will always have access to this resource. It will be available as a PDF as well as again, it's something that you can actually refer to. And I'm just pointing out a couple things here. For shapes, again, shapes are two-dimensional, so they're flat. Obviously, there are more shapes than what I provided, so you can always talk about different shapes. And what I mean by other is you would decide, okay, it's a different type of shape. Forms are three-dimensional. Colors, there are so many ways to talk about colors. If you do not know what these words mean, Google them, look them up. So for textures, I have the word other because maybe there are some other textures that are not on this list that you think that sculpture is using. The second page focuses on the principles of design. And now emphasis doesn't have vocabulary for you to use, but it has questions to help your thinking. For emphasis, what is the first thing you focus on in the artwork? How do you know that is the focal point? So the principles of design have some questions to actually help you guide your thinking. That's really what it is. But again, when you talk about the principles of design, you often have to talk about the elements that are being used. So use this resource to actually help you in your writing. It will make your writing so much stronger and help improve your analysis of the elements and principles of design.